All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all. Welcome to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 12 hours, for the next 4 hours. Wow, where did time go, eh? For the next 4 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. The X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. Right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and Simul TV. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. To find out about the programming we have available for you, it's 24/7, 365 with our compliments on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Visit www.xzbn.net. And for all the programming that we have available on the X Zone TV channel, go to www.simultv.com, and in the search engine on that page, just type in X Zone. Speaking about Simul TV, I'd like to welcome two new affiliates to the X Zone TV channel, HD55 TV in Los Angeles, California, and to over 10 million homes in India on MX Systems. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Dean Tong, and he is an internationally noted author, certified forensic consultant, certified child forensic interviewer, and expert witness concentrating in the areas of high conflict divorce, child custody, abuse accusations, albeit sexual or physical child abuse, domestic violence, as well as parental alienation and sexual allegations in divorce. Mr. Tong has tendered testimony as an expert witness in cognitive child development, psychology, and best practice forensic child interview methods, as well as the mishandling of protective investigations by CPS and the police. Joining me now is Dean Tong. And Dean, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us today.
Rob, thanks for having me back.
You are one busy guy. You've been in this business, I believe, for 35 years?
I have, if you include my personal experience back to 1985. That's correct.
What was it that brought you to do the great work? And I, as a former police officer myself, I can let our listeners know that the work that you do is invaluable. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. It was firsthand experience. Got involved in a very bitter acrimonious custody battle myself in Florida in 1985, and found myself accused of sexual assault of my 3-year-old daughter, and I got arrested in Florida. Found out that in a case like this, the mindset of the system is children don't lie, children are not mistaken, must be believed and protected at all costs, so you're actually presumed guilty, not innocent, when it comes to this allegation, and that's exactly what I was up against. It took over 15 months to have Florida drop the charges against me, but I was curtailed in the family court. I could only see my kids chaperone, supervised, monitored. That went on for several years. So I just decided to graduate my own experience into my life calling, and went on to publish 3 books, get a master's, write a scientific journal article that was published in 2007 on sexual deviancy of the accused, and then, of course, the rest is pretty much history. I've worked cases now from all 50 states, and I have spoken twice in your country, in Toronto and Saskatchewan.
You know, I can't even imagine the hell that you went through, especially during those 15 months when, you were basically branded and you had to go through supervised visitation. Oh, my God.
Yeah,
man.
and back then we didn't have computers or Facebook or Google or iPods or iPads or iPhones or any of that stuff. All you had was a law library and a little brother word processor to do anything you had to do. So you didn't really have the tools at your disposal to be able to fight back, if you will.
Unbelievable. Has the system changed since you had your experience all those 35 years ago?
Technologically, yes, but as far as
the law statutes itself,
the prosecution of these cases, and I think perhaps it is exacerbated with the recent convictions of Bill Cosby and now Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
And I think the system still doesn't do a great job of deciphering truth from falsehood in these cases. I think it's not that they're deliberately doing shoddy investigations, but I think with the resources that they have at their disposal, the education and training that they have is lacking in suggestibility and memory, source contamination, considering alternative hypotheses. How else could this have happened? I've had cases of African-American kids with Mongolian warts being falsely diagnosed as physical abuse.
Oh, God.
Other cases of shaken baby syndrome that turned out to be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or osteogenesis imperfecta.
Now, what are those two? What are those two?
A lot of mistakes being made by well-meaning, well-intentioned, but perhaps misguided professionals.
Now, you were talking about the shaken child syndrome, and then you named two conditions. What are those conditions, and how do they resemble the shaken child syndrome?
Well, the shaken baby syndrome, the two main factors, of course, are bleeding in the eyes, bilateral retinal hemorrhages, as it's called, and subdural hematoma, bleeding in the brain. And, of course, when you get a young kid, 6 months to a year old or so, and, perhaps mom's at work and the paramour or boyfriend's watching the kid,
right?
All of a sudden, the kid has a syncope episode and falls and perhaps suffers a fracture or two with that, goes to the ER.
Right.
First thing that comes to mind by any physician or nurse is, the boyfriend shook this kid because the kid was crying, and, he gets arrested. Mother gets charged with failure to protect by CAS, I believe it's called in your country.
Yep.
And a nightmare evolves, and you have these other medical conditions, vitamin D deficiency, rickets, that could account for similar signs or symptoms. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't give you the whole lowdown of that. But I've had cases in Florida. I had a case where the little girl said her daddy put his pee-pee on her pee-pee. Immediately, the accused was arrested for sexual battery because the system gleaned it was genital on genital contact. That's not what the little girl meant. She meant that daddy urinated on top of her urine in the commode she forgot to flush.
Oh, boy.
A linguistic error. And that's my point.
Yeah.
Is the system is not looking down all streets here to find the truth behind, as your show announces, the fiction. So we see errors being made. So basically, what this is, the police, child protection. Again, well-meaning, well-intentioned. They have a theory. They have a suspect. Any other theory has to be proved by the defense. That's how this works. And mind you, you get as much justice as you can afford. Obviously, these cases are very, very expensive to litigate.
So what about the people who are innocent but can't afford the litigation to clear themselves? Do they remain in the system?
Well, fortunately, there are two courts. One is juvenile dependency court, where child protection can move to terminate your parental rights. The other, of course, being criminal court, where in a case like I got involved in, or other fathers and men get involved in, some mothers as well across this land, sexual assault of children, you can go to prison for life and face lifelong sex offender registration. So there's a lot of consequences hanging in the balance.
Mm-hmm.
In those two jurisdictional cases, juvenile court or criminal court, if you don't have any money, if you are considered what's called informa pauperis or indigent, a judge can order that and then order the state to pay your fees because you have a right to due process. That right to due process includes attorneys and experts.
All right, Dean, stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Thanks so much for joining us. A great pleasure talking to you. And once again, I know that you do a lot, and thank you for your service. That's all I can say. I know that what you do is not also very hard work, but it's also taking a toll on the men and women who actually work these cases. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Once again, if you'd like to find out about the X Zone Broadcast Network, the shows we have on, days and times, visit www.xzbn.net. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Bernie Beitman, who does Connecting with Coincidence on the X Zone Broadcast Network, to the X Zone TV channel. He's going to be doing coincidence vignettes, as well as I'd like to welcome a good friend of mine from Toronto, Hassan Jeffer, who is going to be doing astro vignettes on the X Zone TV channel. For more information on the X Zone TV channel, visit www.simultv.com and in the search engine, type in X Zone.
Come on, women, come on, you don't fight fair. But that's okay, see if I care. Knock me down,
Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night. Roxanne, you don't have to wear that dress tonight.
Exonation Dean Tong is my special guest this hour. And for more information about Dean, visit his website, abuse-excuse.com. Dean has consulted on protected divorce, custody, and abuse-related cases for 25 years now. He's worked with court cases from all 50 states, and his services have been granted by judges in several juvenile dependency and criminal court cases across America who don't have the financial means to bring him into a case, so the courts order the state to pay his fees. Once again, his website is www.abuse-excuse.com. Dean, how long did it take for you to get your life back in order after the horrific events that you went through?
Well, I started writing in 1988, and my first book was published in 92, so the catharsis probably started then. And I did have to go see a psychologist for 6 months when I was going through the allegations because I was a bit suicidal at the time, around 86 or 87. So it was traumatizing to say the least. And there's not a lot of hope there because it's not just the physical and mental and financial drag down, but there's the waiting game, if you will. Takes a lot of discipline. These cases are marathons, not sprints. I have a case right now in Arizona, and the defendant has been in jail for 5 years pending trial.
My God.
Yeah. So, and most of these cases, Rob, are he said, she said, they said, what a child said, meaning only 5% are medical forensic findings, STDs or bodily fluids or broken hymen or something that traumatic. Most of these cases are hearsay.
Right.
Words from the mouths of babes, and that's all that's required to send you to a prison cell and your mug on the internet for life and lifelong sex offender registration. So, and again, a well-meaning system, but they place the kid, the child victim, in immediate therapy. Again, the mindset is the children don't lie; they're not mistaken when they talk about sexual touches by adult men. And it's a credibility shootout is basically what it is between the child victim and the accused.
Now, let us say, for example, the case that you're working on now in Arizona. You've got somebody who's been in custody for 5 years. At the end of it all, he is found not guilty. Does he get any restitution because he was incarcerated for 5 years? Does he get anything to help get him back to a normal life, if he can ever have a normal life?
Negative, unless he files suit in federal court under 42 U.S.C. 1983 and successfully prosecutes that lawsuit for damages, compensatory punitive damages. It's not like a case of, the Innocence Project, Barry Scheck, where it's a mistaken DNA case and you've been in prison for 30 years or something. And yes, in that type of case, the Department of Corrections, the state will, perhaps give you $1 or $2 or $3 million for the wrongful time that chewed up half of your life. Not in a case like this.
No way.
Like I said, most of these cases are not DNA. Very rarely would you have DNA. Obviously, there's no blood or usually no bodily fluids. No fibers or hairs like an O.J. Simpson. None of that.
Unreal. So here you've got somebody who was arrested, fingerprinted, mugshot, thrown into the system. Isn't he supposed to be innocent until proven guilty?
Is supposed to be, Rob, but not in these types of cases.
No way.
Whenever you include the sexual connotation to an allegation, to a charge, that's the one allegation that's going to raise the eyebrows and the hair off the head of lay jurors in the jury box, and of course the judge. It's the one allegation, where these people are thinking, how could this kid say this unless it happened? And if the lawyer goes in there and your only defense is motive, perhaps it was a custody battle, perhaps it was over money, that's usually not enough. That's usually not good enough to get a jury to vindicate the accused because you could prove motive, means, method, opportunity. So as experts, we're looking for sexual triggers.
Okay.
What could have triggered this adult or this kid to go down the sexual impropriety road all of a sudden after a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, decades? And we've seen this on and on with the Catholic Church and clergy over the years. Many are guilty, by the way. But there are wounded innocents that are swept up with the guilty. And in my work, in my opinion, just one wounded innocent is one too many.
Exactly.
So we get down to sexual triggers, and could it have been a book, a movie, a website? Could it have been another person, another kid, another adult that could have implanted a false memory? Could it have been a therapist? Could it have been a kid with ADHD who's on Vyvanse that could cause hallucinations or delusions? There's a lot of things that can interrupt the process of memory. Memory's not a perfect videotape. It deteriorates with the passage of time. So whether you've been raped, whether you've been shot in Vietnam, Afghanistan, or Iraq, chances are, unless you're LeBron James with a photographic memory, you're not going to recall the entire event and have verbatim memory. You're going to have gist memory and only recall bits and pieces of that trauma.
Let me ask you something. The cases that you work on, are they mostly married couples, or are these cases where mom has hooked up with a guy, the child is from another family, another man? Is there any common thread here?
Dynamics.
Really?
It's all dynamics. I even get cases where there's no family relation sometimes, but of course the alleged perpetrator knows the victim, because they usually do. Stranger molestation and rape is very rare. That's the exception to the rule. So most of the victims know the accused in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be an intrafamilial case.
Is it mostly the father or the man of the household, or are the other relatives involved, uncles and grandparents? Are they the minorities, or is it right across the board?
Right. You're right. Usually the grandparents are the minority, and usually in sex cases, it is the father or the stepfather who's accused of molesting, the son or the daughter. Rarely will you have both genders involved because we have little or no empirical data on that, where the accused would sexually abuse both genders, male and female children. Occasionally, I'll get what's called MVMO cases, multiple victim, multiple offender. The other upside, of course, for the child victim or the adult victim, if you will, at least in America, is we have a rape shield statute in all 50 states, meaning if the defense lawyer is trying to say this is a mistaken identity, you got the wrong guy, that's not going to work because of the rape shield statute. So an alternative suspect is not going to win the day for the accused. So if this is a tennis match, immediately advantage a victim.
Yep.
And of course, in my work, I see many non-abused children who are treated as if they have been abused. As I just alluded to, these cases being marathons, not sprints, you'll see a kid in therapy for weeks, months, years prior to going to trial. And, of course, the therapy, again, while just like with the police and social services, well-meaning, well-intentioned, but you could be treating the kid for a condition the kid's not suffering from. So we have this ACE, it's called, study that was conducted in the late 90s. It's now getting a lot more visibility today as you and I are speaking. ACE standing for Adverse Childhood Experience. And we actually have a test that can be done to determine how many ACEs the child has suffered in his or her life, which could lead to heart disease, anxiety, depression, even suicide. So the higher the number of ACEs, obviously the worse off for the child. This is something where all the professionals have to consider all alternative hypotheses. And of course, my work was really preceded by Dr. Stephen Ceci, that's spelled C-E-C-I, but pronounced like Whitney Houston's mother, Cece. And Dr. Ceci, who of course is on Wikipedia, is probably the leading expert on the planet in child development, human development. He is the Helen Carr Professor at Cornell University. His studies in the 90s were published on Dateline in 2020 on half of the kids that they studied. Him and his associate, Dr. Maggie Bruck, who, by the way, originally did her work at McGill in Canada. She's now at Johns Hopkins in Maryland. A lot of the work that they studied, little kids, 4 or 5-year-old kids, were talking about sexual touches by adult men that never happened.
Oh, boy.
One study they did, the little girl, the pediatrician, glossed his stethoscope along her thigh, and when Dr. Bruck interviewed the same kid about 15 minutes later, the kid said the pediatrician hammered a stick into her vagina. And, of course, there was no stick and there was no vagina.
All right, stand by, please, Dean. We've got to take...
I'm sorry, there was no hammer and there was no stick. Of course, there was a vagina.
Right.
But I have the study on DVD.
All right, stand by, Dean. We've got to take our news break. Exonation Dean Tong is our special guest. www.abuse-excuse.com. And Dean and I will be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada.
You don't care if it's wrong or if it's right. Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne. There's a world where I can go and tell my secrets to in my room, in my room, in my room. In this world I lock out all my worries and my fears. In
Exonation Dean Tong is my special guest this hour. For more information on Dean and the work that he does, visit www.abuse-excuse.com. Dean, before we went to the break, you were telling us about this young girl who was seen by a doctor. The doctor's stethoscope accidentally brushed her on the thigh. And 15 minutes later, when she was asked about the incident, it was totally different.
Well, she embellished what the doctor did to Dr. Bruck in the interview by Dr. Bruck, that the pediatrician had hammered a stick into her lower genital, and of course there was no hammer and there was no stick. So Dr. Cece and Dr. Bruck's studies pretty much proved that if the kid can talk about the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Peter Pan, can talk about how Daddy touched my pee-pee.
Exactly.
And these studies were widely published. I might add, they're difficult to get into evidence into a court of law still today, some 25, 30 years later, because of the overzealous and yet passionate demeanor judges have to protect children, and of course the child protection system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that most of these cases are lies. Most are not malicious lies, and people seem to misunderstand that most of these cases are lies, so they're false allegations, or because there aren't many lies, there are very few false allegations. Well, that's correct. There are very few false, premeditated, bad faith allegations, but there are scores of unfounded, unsubstantiated cases, what we call in psychology source misattribution errors, where there's another possible origin or source of the trauma if there is a trauma.
So with all this new technology that we have available to us, can any of the technology be used to better understand whether the child is embellishing or actually telling the truth?
Well, on the forensic end, real quickly, Rob, we have touch DNA now over the past decade.
Okay.
So now we can test jeans and underwear and other undergarments from years ago, decades ago, and still pull up forensic proof. Don't know how often the crime labs analyze that stuff, but most of my cases are just hearsay. He said, she said, they said. So in those cases, you want the child interviewed by an open-ended interviewer,
right.
Interviewers who's using open-ended questions. Can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me more about that? Not, did Daddy touch your pee-pee? That's leading, that's suggestive, it's closed-ended. It's negative stereotype induction, vilifying the accused. So we have a method called the NICHD, which was created at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. My colleague, Dr. Phil Esplin, was the co-author of that method 20 years ago in 2000. But because it is difficult sometimes to extract an outcry from a child during a forensic interview, it's not oftentimes used. So the system, at least here in America, tends to use the more lenient methodologies, if you will, RATAC and APSAC and the CAC model, which allow for leading, suggestive, closed-ended, direct questions, repeated questions, which basically tap into the child's explicit memory, not the child's implicit memory. And by implicit, I mean spontaneous. So the law requires a judge or jury to find the child or the woman, if it's an adult rape allegation with no forensic evidence, credible,
right.
that her allegation be spontaneous, reliable, and trustworthy. Those are the three factors. So you want to tap into the complaining witness's autobiographical free recall memory, her implicit memory. So you don't want to put words or thoughts or ideas into the mind of the kid or the adult. Because what are you doing by doing that? You're contaminating or tainting or adulterating that information.
Has the Me Too movement...
That usually requires an expert witness to accompany the lawyer in court on the case.
All right, speaking about that, if a lawyer asks you to assist them in their work, what do you do?
Yeah, so I work in a two-pronged test capacity. One is strategy. Part of that strategy is helping on questions for depositions under oath. Another would be at trial, questions on direct and cross and redirect and recross examination of opposing fact and expert witnesses. Plus, of course, I testify myself in multiple areas of psychology and social science. Oftentimes in a civil case, child custody or dependency case against CAS, for example, in your country,
Right.
I'm excluded from the rule of sequestration, meaning I would be the only witness allowed in the courtroom the entire trial, and I can get up there on the witness stand and also testify for the defense. There's a special exception for me as a defense expert in that capacity. Now, that doesn't happen in criminal cases, but in civil cases it can happen if the lawyer files a motion with the court.
Okay,
That's happened.
I'm having a bit of a problem understanding if sexual abuse is the allegation, how can it not be a criminal case? Can it be criminal and not civil? And can it be civil, not criminal?
Yes, to both of your questions. And, that's basically up to the mindset of the system. So in a case, for example, where it's a stepfather that has no parental rights to the kid,
Right.
The complaining witness or victim, in that case, the accused, the stepfather, is probably going to more likely not get arrested because the government has no control over that stepfather for dependency because the stepfather is not our DNA relative, so he has no visitation rights. So the criminal arrest would basically kill two birds with one stone. It would be an immediate restraining order against the victim, plus he'd be in jail pending if he can get out on bond. And if he can't get out on bond, he's going to stay in jail until he goes to trial.
Right. Okay, so in either case, the testimony of the child or the victim, is taken at face value that the person is, in this case, guilty until proven innocent.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
This is pretty much the horse of the different color, the exception to the rule, if you will, because of our strenuous zeal to protect children of this most reprehensible and heinous crime when it is committed. But I guess that's the $64,000 question and answer is
Exactly.
When that is committed.
Why do you think it's so important for the accused to submit to risk assessment testing?
Well, I use it religiously in my practice. I have a doctor I've been working with for over a dozen years that does testing of all my clients. It's a piece of data that we like to have. We know from the science sexual interest precedes the act of sexual assault in most cases. So we're looking for that, whether the accused has any sexual interest or propensity or penchant to show sexual gratification in kids or prepubescent girls or males, boys, depending on the sex of the victim. We're also looking for what's called cognitive distortions. Most pedophiles are very clandestine, clever criminals, and they can try to con their lawyer, their family, the system, themselves. Real great hoodwinkers. And so we're looking for cognitive distortions, especially if the accused has threatened the victim. If you tell anybody, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to hurt your mother, hurt your family. The cognitive distortion scale score within the ABLE Assessment for Sexual Interest test, the website for that is ablescreening.com. That's ABEL. Screening.com. That's a very important factor with child molesters and pedophiles. So if they score less than 25%, most of my clients that are, that are innocent usually score 10 or 12% or even less. But greater than 25%, then Houston, we have a problem where they may actually have given the kid an ultimatum. If you tell anybody, people are going to be in trouble. So the only way you could really impeach that yucky secret, if you will, is to obtain the CD scale score, or the cognitive distortion scale score of the accused.
All right, stand by, Dean. You and I have to take our final break. And Exo Nation, if you'd like more information about our guest this hour, Dean Tong is his name, and the website is abuse-excuse.com or abuse-excuse.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Dean Tong and I return after this break. My gosh. What a nightmare it would be.
You're up there.
All right, stand by, Dean. We'll be right back.
In this world I lock out all my worries and my fears in my room. I shot the sheriff, but I did not shoot the deputy. I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy. All around my hometown, they're trying to track me down. They say they want to bring me in guilty for the killing of a deputy. For the life of a deputy.
Welcome back, everyone. Dean Tong is our special guest this hour. His website is abuse-excuse.com. First of all, Dean, again, thank you so much for being on the show. And as a former law enforcement officer, all I can say is that, man, I wish you were around on many of the cases that I worked on.
Well, Rob, thanks for having me again, and appreciate your service, too, to law enforcement.
Dean, how important is using the right attorney or finding the right attorney in these cases?
Yeah, that's clearly a 10. I mean, I'm the running back, if you will, but who's responsible for the litigation of the case, your quarterback, your litigator, is the attorney. And I can't compel a lawyer to do anything. I can only suggest and recommend as an expert. So in any case, family court, juvenile court, criminal court, you've got to have the correct attorney, and that's not throwing darts at lawyers.com. I mean, there's a science to that. So in my book, Elusive Innocence, at my website, there's a section in both, how to choose your attorney, and very, very important. These cases especially. So, you can get a criminal attorney. I met a very good one 20 years ago when I spoke in Toronto. When I was there, Walter Fox, really nice gentleman, excellent criminal attorney. Oh my gosh, he must have almost 50 years of experience. If you go to his website, I think it's walterfoxlaw.ca. But I mean, this is not DUI, this is not bank robbery, it's not murder, it's not drug kingpins. It's child sexual assault based on the words and mouths of babes. So it's the horse of the different color. A lot of lawyers don't get this in law school, and, lawyers, we're still in a deep recession. They'll be glad to take your retainer check. So be very, very careful who you're hiring because, you may go through 3, 4, or 5 until you pick the right one, and by that time, the court may not even allow you to change horses and change counsel anymore.
How long do these cases usually take? Is there an average?
Criminal, as we talked about, my one case, a man's been in jail for 5 years. They can take 18 months to 3 years. I mean, that's probably the norm in my caseload. I've got a custody case right now going on for almost 3 years, still going.
Lord.
That's just family law. So there's really no set time frame, but really will I get involved in a case and it lasts less than 6 months. So it's going to be anywhere from 6 months to multiple years.
Does the court offer any support to the victims during these processes? Is there counseling for the children or the adult victim?
Oh yeah, yeah. Both the adult, the child will be in psychotherapy. They'll get a victim's advocate. They're allowed sometimes, many times, fill out what's called a victim compensation fund form for money. And all this before there's been an adjudication of the facts of the case, which, of course, is part of the problem I have with the system, because it's basically what we call confirmatory bias. It's a preconceived notion. This happened before any trier of fact has heard the facts. It's like treating a kid for cancer with chemotherapy or radiation before the lab physician has diagnosed the kid with cancer.
Right.
So yeah, you can't have a rush to judgment mindset here. You can't have a situation where emotions supersede logic. And when I'm on a case, of course, I try to be on the same page as the attorney, intersecting the facts of the case with the science and the law. That's how you win in court.
Are there red flags that you are able to pick up on when you're during the trial and the child and the case don't jive?
Well, sure. I mean, in any case, most of my cases are child sexual assaults. So you're going to see some, you would expect to see some degree of signs, symptoms, behaviors, regressive behaviors, perhaps with the kids, some signs of trauma, perhaps even a diagnosis of PTSD, secondary to the child's so-called purported victimization. And obviously motivations obviously come into play. Is this a high conflict divorce and custody battle where a child could be wielded as a pawn, weapon, or tool for the purpose of gaining equity at law and court by the accuser, perhaps the mother behind the kid or the grandmother? So acrimony, disharmony is always a factor. But you always look for stuff like this. You hope to have this before you go to trial. It's all about preparation.
Sure.
Preparation is the key to winning these cases.
When it comes to the court itself, do you find that there is a difference between a male judge and a female judge in these cases?
Well, I helped to win a case for a mother last year here in Florida. The government tried to terminate her rights, and we had a female judge. And, I wondered at the start when I came to trial that week whether the judge would be objective or perhaps against the mother because she was a mother herself.
Right.
With that confirmatory bias, preconceived notion, opinion that, oh my gosh, these are heinous allegations. She's accused of coaching her kid to falsely accuse the dad of incest. I wonder if this judge already has tapped my client as guilty. Well, we won that case after a long, drawn-out battle. Months it took to trial because the court had to bifurcate its calendar. So she was an objective judge in the end, and that's what's most important.
Obviously, there are cases that never come to court or that aren't reported to the police, where there is sexual abuse.
Absolutely.
How can a person know? Are there signs that go unnoticed because mom or dad really don't both? It never crosses their mind that their child could be suffering from sexual abuse. Are there any signs that you can share with us that parents could look out for?
Well, overt signs, obviously you're not going to see. Covert signs, sure. You're looking for a kid who's withdrawn. A kid, maybe her grades are failing in school.
Right.
Obviously, a kid who was very gregarious and extroverted has become introverted. Now is the shy, precocious kid. And like she's hiding a secret.
Yeah.
So, that's something, you're going to have to investigate internally, if you will. And here in Florida, everybody's a mandated reporter now, not just, teachers and police officers and social workers and nurses and doctors and clergy. Everybody's a mandated reporter in my state of Florida. It's the way it should be across the country, I think.
I agree.
If you have a reasonable suspicion that a kid has been abused or neglected, you should report it. Then it's up to the government to conduct an official investigation or not.
Statistically speaking, are these accusations increasing or decreasing?
I think the number of reports, Rob, are increasing. I think in America now there's, I think the last report was over 4 million reports a year, but
Wow.
it's still a very high unfounded or unsubstantiated rate. It's only about a 20% confirmed rate with abuse and neglect. So maybe 1 out of 5 is confirmed. That's a very unacceptably high, unfounded, unsubstantiated, unconfirmed rate where it doesn't even meet 51% preponderance of evidence in a court of law.
Your books, where are they available?
Well, the first 2 are from the 90s, so one of those is out of print. But Elusive Innocence, published in 2002, is still available at Amazon. A lot of the information the same is still pretty current, although, of course, if there are any internet websites in there, they may be bad links. But the information itself is still pretty current.
Dean, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us tonight and for the great work that you do. I wish you continued success, and I'm sure there are many people who would like to have the opportunity of what I'm going to do right now, and that is thank you for the work that you do and for dedicating so much of your time to bringing those who are guilty to justice and fighting for the innocence of those who aren't. Thank you.
Thank you again, Rob, and God bless you and what you do up there.
God bless you too, my friend. And Exo Nation, if you'd like more information about our guest this hour, Dean Tong, visit his website, www.abuse-excuse.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
All around my hometown, they're trying to track